Like many of you, I have some really smart friends, and some of them are brilliant. And one of the characteristics of their lives is that they are great readers. They love to read. They're able to comprehend what they're reading, and then they're able to bring that back up in a conversation later on when it's really needed. And so some of you have friends like that. I, on the other hand, I have to work hard at all of that. I'm not a great reader, and then comprehension, I got a slow mind, so it takes me a little bit. And so some of these guys around the office that are much smarter than me, I kind of envy how much they can, they just consume books, and they're able to spit out all of this knowledge. I'm not that guy. In fact, in school, I favored math and numbers. That's where I like to sit, and it was easy to me. And the classes that I didn't like were history and English. Anybody with me? Because you had to read a lot in those classes, and I didn't want to do all of that reading. And there was one class that I really didn't like, and it was English literature. So I can pretty much tell you, you can bank on this. In my downtime, you're not going to find me reading poetry or literature. That's just not something that I'm gonna do. But even with that, even with my dislike of American literature, when I was in high school, I couldn't help but be drawn in to some of the classics, right? Like Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. How can you not like that story? And most of us know the story, right, of this love story of this young couple who they just deeply love one another, but because their families were enemies, the chance of them getting married was not going to happen at all. But they loved each other, and regardless of their names, they thought that this substance of love that they had for one another would be able to fix everything and to work. And as little as I know about literature, I am familiar with the phrase, "A rose by any other name would still smell as sweet." And in the context, that's Juliet speaking, communicating the fact that Romeo's last name is just that. It's just a name. It's not the man himself. And so believe it or not, I'm going to read you where that is in context. I'm going to read some poetry on Sunday morning. So write it down, because this may never happen again on the platform. In fact, in between the hours, one of my buddies texted me, and he said, "Hey, it would be okay with me if you never read poetry again." Okay, so, but here it is, and it says this: "'Tis but thy name that is my enemy. Thou art thyself, though not a Montague." What's Montague? "It is nor hand, nor foot, nor arm, nor face, nor any other part belonging to a man. Oh, be some other name." Why do we always lift our hands when we read poetry? I don't know. What's in a name? And then here's the line in context: "That which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet." What's in a name? Juliet decides that she doesn't care about Romeo's last name. She loves the man, not the name. That line, which over time has changed a little bit, is now used to infer that the character of something is way more important than the name of something. You can change the name to just about anything you want, but it doesn't change the essential character, the essential nature, the substance of the thing. The name is not essential to the character. A rose smells and looks beautiful no matter what you call it. Today we start a brand new series entitled New, as Josh mentioned, a new name, a new day, and a new season. And by now, most of you know that our church is changing its name as we move forward into this next season. And over the past 3 weeks since we made the announcement, you've been sending emails and texts and suggestions of new names, and it's been encouraging to us. And this hasn't been an easy task for us to switch the name. After all, some of us have been using the name for over 15 years, so it hasn't come easy. But since making the announcement, you've been letting us know, and we've been both surprised and encouraged by how much of this place has meant to you. You've shared your stories about life change. And to be honest, when we agreed to change the name, we knew we loved the name, but we didn't realize and had no idea how much the name really meant to you. But if I could press in just for a minute on the whole name thing, I think Juliet was right. The reason so many of us love this place is not because of the name that's on the door. We've always said it, the church is people, and we exist to spread the fame of Jesus in our city, and we exist to help people be disciples who make disciples. It's not about a building. It's not about a name. It's not even about a personality. We love this place because we associate it with something deeper, something of substance, something more fundamental. The name describes the culture, the feel when you come into this place. It describes the relationships, the good work done, the people that are here, and the mission that we have elevated for the past 15 years. And none of those things are changing. Yes, we lost an amazing founding pastor and a leader. But Jesus will still remain preeminent in this place. And with the team that's assembled, we're going to continue to be in pursuit of doing things right and making a difference in the city and taking part in accountable relationships between one another so we can help each other look and love and live more like Jesus. Because we all have the understanding it's not what we're called, but our effectiveness in carrying out the mission of Jesus that makes all the difference. Because after all, the church wasn't and isn't our idea. The first time we see the word church mentioned in the New Testament is in Matthew chapter 16, verse 18, when Jesus is talking to his disciples. And he's asking them, hey, what are people saying about me? What are they saying about me? So they respond, well, some people think you're John the Baptist resurrected. Some think you're Elijah or Jeremiah or one of the other prophets. But then Jesus says, and he presses in, he's like, all right, well, look, you have been hanging with me this whole time. So what do you guys think? You've seen things. You've heard me. What do you think? And they said, Peter says, well, you're Jesus. You're the Christ. And then Jesus responds this way, and I tell you that you're Peter, and on this rock, this declaration, what you just said, I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. It was a declaration. Jesus was speaking about this body of people that he himself would establish. But before the establishment of the church Jesus spoke about, it was birthed out of a mission that Jesus gave to his disciples, and it's what we call the Great Commission in Matthew chapter 28. They were in essence the marching orders that Jesus was giving his disciples. Now think about this just for a minute. Jesus was giving these orders to these men that were standing right in front of him. And if you're a disciple at this point, you got to know that their mind was blown, their hearts were confused, they didn't know what to think, because standing in front of them was a person who just rose from the dead. They knew just earlier he had been betrayed in the garden, he had been brutally beaten, he had been crucified on a cross, he was put in a tomb, and here he is. And so we even read in Luke's account, his eyewitness account, that Jesus had to open their minds to understanding because they could not comprehend what was happening. And then we see in Matthew, regardless of what they were happening, Jesus makes the mission extremely clear. And he says this in Matthew 28, and you know the verses. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe everything that I have commanded you. And I'm with you. I'm going to be with you even to the very end. That's the mission. Jesus didn't say, hey, look, this is what I want you guys to do. I want you to go out there and I want you to establish a bunch of churches. I want you to build a bunch of buildings. I want you to create a bunch of ministries, have a bunch of committees. No, Jesus didn't say any of that. He said, I want you to go and make disciples. Jesus didn't create the church and then decide why it would exist and what it would do. It was the other way around. Jurgen Moltmann says this: there is a church because there is mission, not vice versa. Jesus gave the disciples the mission, and then as we jump into the book of Acts, you begin to see believers coming together. And as people began to follow Jesus, that is when the church emerges. Then and only then does Jesus give the name to those people, ecclesia. And that's when it begins to matter, because ecclesia was a Greek word, and it wasn't unique to Jesus. It simply meant this: a gathering, an assembly, a group of people called out for a specific purpose. So whenever a group of people came together under a common banner for a common purpose, they could be called an ecclesia. Like our word from church actually comes from a German word, Kirche, which means sacred place. In fact, the most common name used for the Jesus movement in the New Testament wasn't ecclesia, it wasn't church, it was the way. And these early followers of Jesus, they were stewards of this way to Jesus for everyone. And the first century church, they owned the Great Commission. They owned these words, and they were on mission. So fast forward to us. Here we are, 2,000 plus years later, and the name that has been attached to this body for over the past 15 years has been the banner that we operated under to continue the same mission of Jesus that was established over 2,000 years ago. You can ride all over Raleigh, up and down the streets. You see tons of churches, tons of names on churches, but the name does not make the church unique. What makes the church unique is the people that are in there and what they're doing and how they are carrying out the mission of Jesus. And that's the same with us. You and I, and how we live out the mission of Jesus makes this place unique, not the name. It's not what we're called, but it's the effectiveness in carrying out Jesus' mission that makes all the difference. Now, with all of that being said, a name still carries importance. A name says something. It's not that it doesn't matter at all. In fact, when you start to open up the Bible from page 1, you begin to see names all over the place, and every name with a meaning. And as you continue to flip through the scripture, you begin to see name changes, where names are changed by family or by king or even God himself. We see in Genesis chapter 17, for example, where God changes the name of Abram and Sarai to Abraham and Sarah. If you flip the pages a little bit more, you see where God changes Jacob's name to Israel. And then even if you go to the New Testament, you see where Jesus changes Simon's name to Peter. And so the Bible doesn't give an exact reason as to why it was important for the name change. But with every name change, there was a story. There was something that God was doing in their lives to bring about his purposes. There was a pivot to a new moment, a new day. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that God is changing our name. But I will tell you that God is not surprised by that. God knows everything from beginning to end, and nothing escapes him. And everything that's surrounding this change, God knows all about. He's sovereign. He's in total control. Even though there are times it doesn't seem like he's in control because this is his church. And so he knows what's going on. And with a new name for us comes a new moment. Again, this is ushered in by a moment that with the loss of our founding pastor. And let's be honest, that's not a moment that any of us wanted or chose. But in God's perfect timing, he's brought us to this moment, so we venture in to this next season with a new name for this local body of believers. You ready for it? 7 Marks Church. That's our new name, 7 Marks Church. And as I stated, well, you can clap. I've had the opportunity, and our staff has had the opportunity to sit with this name for a couple weeks, so it's really growing on us. But I want to tell you, we have wrestled with this, and this has not been easy. So many of you sent in names, and we had close to 100 names, and a few weeks ago on a board back in Studio 5, we put all the names on the board, and we began to, if any one particular staff person hated it, we just erased it immediately. And so we kept going, and we kept erasing names, and we got down to this group of names, and some of them were more generic in nature, like they had Raleigh in the name or Triangle in the name. And so we felt that would be a cop-out to just use a general name. And then a word that I absolutely love and I wanted to lean towards was hope. But do you know how many hope churches there are in Raleigh and in the Triangle? And then we like the word grace and we like faith. But all of those, there are so many churches with all of those names. And so we knocked off all the generic. We said, well, they're either regional in nature and we want to be beyond that. We always have been beyond the region. And so we got down to a group of names that were unique to us. And so the more we talked, we started to ask questions. Well, what do we want to be known for? What do we want to fight for? What do we want for the body of people that are here? What do we want for our city? And as we kept talking, we kept coming back to what we have been working to make central in this body of people for the past 4 years. And that is to be a disciple maker, to be somebody that helps other people follow Jesus. Like, we want to be known for that. So if that's what we want for our body of people, if that's what we want for our city, why not just call it 7 Marks? And so we desire for you, I desire for me, I want to be a disciple maker, one who is surrendering all of life to Jesus and leading others into relationship with him. And so now these 7 marks, they're not the only characteristics of a follower of Jesus or a disciple, but we believe they're the minimum radicals for a disciple. We believe they're fundamental for us to carry out the mission that Jesus has given us, and they're the result of months of work from our discipleship team. And so in the coming months, you're going to see them displayed creatively in the lobby. They're going to shape what we do here on the weekend and in different environments, because we want you to know how to be a disciple maker, and we want you to wear the marks of a disciple. And so, interesting enough, you may not, well, you wouldn't have known this, but Unique, the series that we just finished last week, that was birthed out of the first mark of a disciple, your identity in him. And so although I don't have time to flesh out every single one of these marks this morning, I want to give you kind of a brief overview of them. Because here's our desire as a leadership team, is we want you to be able to repeat these 7 marks in less than just 10 seconds. We want you, and when somebody asks you, hey, like 7 marks, what's that all about? We want you to be able to say, well, those are the characteristics of a follower of Jesus. And you can jump right into it, and you can say, so what about you, man? What do you think about Jesus? And you're off and running, talking about your faith in him. And so we're going to jump in, and the first mark is that you're centered in Jesus. That your identity is in Jesus. You know who you are. You abide in him, as John 15 talks about, and your whole life is informed by that identity, as Caleb talked about last week in our last week of the Unique series. You matter. Like, you matter. God loved you so much that he sent his only son, Jesus, to die a brutal death on the cross, to be buried, rose again, to give you life and to give it to you abundantly. And so when Jesus comes into your life, man, he makes you new. 2 Corinthians 5 talks about you're a new creation. The old things are gone, man. You are a new person. And then Paul continues in Galatians 2:20, man, I've been crucified with Christ, but it's no longer me. Like, Christ lives in me, and the life that I now live in flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. So mark number 1 is that you know who you are in Jesus. And I will tell you this, all of the other marks flow from knowing who you are and your identity in Jesus. And Mark 2 is that you grow spiritually, that you're growing. Healthy things grow. And in order for them to grow, you have to be fed. And we said this for as long as I can remember from this platform. You don't accidentally become like Jesus. It doesn't happen. As we apply ourselves to spiritual practices and habits, then we grow into and adopt the lifestyle of Jesus. And after Easter, we're going to jump into a series that's really going to help you with this. And mark number 3 is that we are Spirit-led. If you read throughout the New Testament, all the letters of Paul, you will see over and over and over again that we are encouraged and commanded to be filled with the Spirit, to be controlled by the Spirit, to be led by the Spirit, to exercise the gifts of the Spirit, to demonstrate the fruit of the Spirit. And that happens through a surrendered life when we are learning to hear the voice of God, recognize it, and respond to it in obedience. As a follower, that's not optional. There's no way you can be a follower of Jesus without being controlled and led by the Spirit. It's essential to our growth and our effectiveness. Mark number 4 is that we are connected to others. And so when I say connected to others, I'm not simply talking about being in this room on a Sunday morning, although that's important, or watching online on a Sunday morning or whenever during the week, although that's important. What I'm talking about is living in biblical community with one another. You're part of the family. I know you, you know me, you know stuff about me, I know stuff about you. And together, we're in this accountable relationship, helping one another to grow and follow after Jesus. Number 5, and we're going to see a video about this in just a minute, meeting the needs of others. There are needs all around us. You don't have to look very far to see a need. And what inspired people about the first century church was how these people loved deeply. They loved deeply and extended grace, and they recognized the needs of others, and then they met those needs. They were selfless. They were generous. They looked for ways to bring the kingdom of God to bear on the people that were around them. And then mark number 6, that we proclaim Jesus. That we proclaim Jesus. Let's be honest. Followers today are quiet when it comes to Jesus. We are quiet. I was reading a stat this past week that most church growth comes from transfer growth. Right? So you don't like this church, you go to another church down the street. You don't like that church, you go to another one. Oh, this church is brand new. Let's see if they got something new and different. And so people move from church to church, and you see one church grows, another church diminishes in their attendance. Do you know how much growth comes from new conversions? Like people who accept Jesus into their life, and then they start coming to church. You know how much growth that consists of in a church? Between 1 and 3%. 1 and 3%. We don't proclaim Jesus because, no, there are a lot of reasons. Maybe because we don't want to appear too religious or too different, or maybe we're just not sure how to engage people in conversation when it comes to our faith, when it comes to Jesus. So we want to be a people, we want to be marked by people who are not afraid to say the name of Jesus. Because listen, if we really believe that we have the words of life from these scriptures, that Jesus is the way, the truth, and life, if we really believe that, and if we really believe that Jesus makes your life better and he makes you better at life, then why wouldn't we share that with other people? To not do so, it just makes us selfish. It makes us cruel, actually, and unloving to people. So we want to have the mark of proclaiming Jesus. And then lastly, we want to help others follow. One of the distinguishing marks of a follower of Jesus is that they turn around and they help somebody else find and follow Jesus. We want to be a people that helps others find and follow Jesus. It's the mission we've been entrusted with. We have been entrusted with this mission. It's what we've been made for. 2 Corinthians 5 says this, we're ambassadors for Christ, God making his appeal through us. We implore you on behalf of Christ, be reconciled to God. We carry the message of reconciliation. So there's the 7 marks. That we know who we are. We are centered in Jesus. Our identity is in him. And that beyond that, we are growing spiritually. We are spirit-led. We are connected with others. We are meeting the needs of others. We're proclaiming Jesus. And we are helping people follow Jesus. Can you imagine for a minute if this group of people and those that are watching online, if we possess these 7 characteristics, if they marked us so deeply, do you think a group of people like that could have a profound kingdom impact? Now, do you think a group of people like that could make a difference in our city? Do you think a group of people like that could make a difference in our neighborhoods and with our coworkers and with our families and friends? I think we can. Again, it's not what we're called, but it's our effectiveness in carrying out the mission of Jesus that makes all the difference. This is a new moment in the life of our church family, a new name, a new day, a new season. New moments always come with new opportunities, but we often miss out on these opportunities because we shrink back or we fail to fail forward, right? We fail to live by faith and we fail to dream. JRR Tolkien says this, the brilliant mind who conceived Middle-earth and Lord of the Rings, a single dream is more powerful than 1,000 realities. The thing that unifies the 1,000+ realities of our individual lives in this room and online as members of this church is our ability to dream together, to live by faith, to trust God to do something that can only be attributed to him. So dream with us. Again, imagine for a minute living out the 7 marks of a disciple. Imagine if that became something we dreamed together and then we spent ourselves to become those people. Imagine what it would look like for 7 marked disciples to dream together for the sake of their city, and then we spent ourselves to realize those dreams. What do you want this church to become? This is your church as much as my church. What do you desire this church family to be for our city? What would you like us to be known for? I want to invite you to do something today, this week. I want you to go to our brand new website, 7markschurch.com. And we've established a dream page on our new website. And so the website's going to continue to be built out. It's not fully built out. We're going to be working on that over the next few weeks. But if you scroll down on the home page, there's a dream page, and you just start dreaming with us, putting your thoughts down, and ideas down. And let's dream together, and we'll move into the future one step at a time. Listen, there's no telling what God will do. He's always working, and he's inviting us into it. There's no telling what he will do with a people who are in pursuit of him and are carrying the marks of a disciple.